this week's Parshas Nosoi, something very nice from the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Yitzchok Zatzal. Parshas Nosoi, we have at the end, we have the whole story about the inauguration, the Chanukas Abayis that happened in Chodesh Nisan, and it goes through all the presents from all the Shvatim that they gave during the first 12 days. And then the last pasuk of the Parsha reads like this. It says, Moshe will come, Aloil Moed, and Yishmael heard the voice from Hashem, and says these words, Asher al Aroin Hoidus, which they'll hear from the Kaporis, which was on top of the Aroin, Mi Bein Shnei Keruvim, which is in between the two Keruvim. Now this description, that Moshe will come and I'll hear the voice of Hashem from in between the Keruvim by the Aroin, is also said in Parshas Teruma, almost similar to the same description, but there's a couple of serious differences between them. Over there it says, Hashem says, "V'ne'adati l'cho," I'm going to come to you. Me'al ha'kaporos, then says, "Mi bein shnei keruvim, asher al aroin eidus." I'm going to speak to you between the keruvim, which was on top of the aroin ha'edus. So ask Rebbe Yitzchok over here many questions, but we're going to focus on 2 or 3. In our parsha, it says first the aroin ha'edus, and then it says the keruvim. It says, "I'll speak to you, Asher al aroin ha'edus," the kaporos, which was you'll hear the voice from the kaporos, which was on top of the aroin. Mi bein shnei keruvim. First, he mentions the Oren, then he says, which is in between the Keruvim. In Parshas Truma, he changes the order. There it says, Hashem says, I'll reveal myself to you. You'll hear my voice. Mi bein shnei Keruvim, asher al aroin ha'edus, which was on top of the Oren. Why in our Parsha does it say first the Oren, and then it says the Keruvim? And in Parshas Truma, first it says the Keruvim, and then it says the Oren. Another question is, if you look good, in our Parsha it says, Asher al aroin ha'edus. Aroin is spelled Aleph Reish Nun. Aroin ha'edus. Doesn't have a vav after the Reish. In Parshas Truma, there it says, Asher al aroin ha'edus. It says with a vav. It's filled up. Aleph Reish Vav Nun. In our Parsha it's missing the vav. Why? Explains Rabbi Yitzchok. There's one more question which we'll mention when we get to the answer. It brings down in Kabbalah and the Chassidus, and the Medrash, that the Oren itself, where you had the Luchos, that symbolizes Hashem himself. As we know, the famous thing, Mokim Oren Einim in the middle, the space of the Oren itself didn't take up any footage in the, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That symbolizes Hashem himself. The Keruvim that was on top, which the Gemara says a sukkah was a face of like a young boy and a young girl, symbolizes the Jewish people. That's the children of Hashem. So we have the Hashem is the Oren, and the Bnei Yisrael symbolizes in the Keruvim. And here comes Rabbi Levi and explains so beautiful. There's 2 types of level of Yidden. And that's the real difference between Parshas Truma and Parshas Nosoi in our Parsha. The Gemara says, in Mesichta Me'ed Kotten, the Tazayin Amid Beis, Hashem says, Tzaddik Goizer, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Goizer, Hashem could make a decree from heaven, but Tzaddik Mevatel, a Tzaddik down here in this world, a Jew from Bnei Yisrael, he has the power to change the decrees in heaven. So much so, because he's so bonded with Torah, he reached up to the level of a Tzaddik, that Hashem himself said, that even if I decree something, a tzaddik down here can change it. We also have in the Gemara in Bava Metzia, Daf Nun Testament base, that they heard a voice from heaven that Allah is like Rebbe Lezer, and all the Chachamim, according to their understanding in Torah, they said no, that Allah is like Rabbi Yeshua, and they met Eliyahu and they asked Eliyahu, what did Hashem say during that whole discussion? Because according to Allah, we have to go according to the majority down here. And Eliyahu said, Hashem said, Nitzchuni, Bonai Nitzchuni. My children, the Yidden, were victorious over me. From heaven, Allah was like Rabbi Eliezer. But the Chacham said no, the Allah is like Rabbi Shua. So we see that a Yid down here, if he connects himself so deeply and bonded to Torah, he has the ability to even change what's going on in heaven. Most Yid are not like that, not the majority of the majority. But if you are in a level of a tzaddik, like the Chachamim, the Rishua, and etc., they can actually change something and have an effect what's doing in heaven. And here explains Rabbi Levi so beautiful. Our Parsha Nosoi happened after the story of the Chet Egel, when Jewish people sinned, and because of that they were distanced from Hashem. As we know, the Gemara says in Sichta Shabbos that when Hashem gave the Torah, Pos Kozu Amos, and the Yetzer Hara was completely taken away from the Yidden. So all the Yidden at that time were like tzaddikim. And now you'll understand the differences of Rebbe Yitzchok based on this main point. In Parshas Truma, where Hashem was right after Matan Torah, the Yidden was then pure, and Hashem gave over to Moshe Rabbeinu how to build the Mishkan. At that time, in Hashem's mind, he looked at the Yidden, that's tzaddikim. This was before the sin of the golden calf. If that's tzaddikim, they could even have an effect on me. They could even change things from heaven. And that's why over there, first it says Keruvim, symbolizes the Jewish people. Asher al Aroin Eidos, which is on top of the Oron, showing that the Yidden at that time have the ability to change something and have an effect on what's going on in heaven. And that's why over there it says Aroin with Avov, to teach you they could fill in an effect and add something which was not in the plans of heaven. That's the extra Vav, showing that the Yidden, the Bnei Yisrael, the Keruvim, they're on top of the Oren, and they could affect the Oren, and they could add something. That's the extra Vav, showing on the addition. They could change Hashem's decree through the tzaddik. So the Yidden at that time were the level of tzaddikim. In our parsha, where it's after the story of the Chet Egel, Yidden weren't on that high level. So now already, they're on the level what's called Bala Tshuva. They're returning to Hashem, still Yidden. Therefore, Hashem says, in this situation, on the lower level, first is the Aroin Eidos, because whatever Hashem says goes, and then Hashem says, Mi Bein HaKruvim, between, symbolizing the Jewish people. Because the Oren over here, symbolizing Hashem, has the greater power, because the Yidden are not in that level of changing from heaven. And with this, we'll explain something very interesting. If you look at the Psukim, in Parshas Truma, everything talks about Hashem. I'm going to come, I'm going to reveal myself, and I'm going to speak, and everything. You talk about Hashem coming to Moshe Rabbeinu. In our Parsha, everything speaks about Moshe Rabbeinu. Ubavoy Moshe, the verse starts. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come, and he'll hear Hashem's word. Everything you talk about the receiver, Moshe Rabbeinu, not the Eibishter. Says Rabbi Levi, this fits with the difference between the Luchos, which was the first Luchos in Parshas Truma, and in our Parsha symbolizing the Luchos Shniyos, the second. The first Luchos came directly from Hashem. The Hashem made it. He molded it, so to say. He cut it out. He made the stones, the Luchos Avonim, and also he inscribed in it the Sesa Dibros. In our Parsha, the Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, you go down to this world, you carve out psolach, or you carve out the stones, and then I'll write it in the second, the Sesa Dibros, the second time. But everything shows it came from bottom up. Man had to, so to say, do tshuva, return, and he wasn't on the level where Hashem elevated you from heaven. Because over there we were on the level of tzaddikim, and on that level it shows where we elevated ourselves so close to Hashem. And our parsha, it shows on the level of luchas shniyos, where Hashem didn't give those luchas. He didn't make it. He wanted us to make it. They're showing on the lower level that's coming from this world, where it shows there's more concealment, where the level of Bala Tshuva, returning to Hashem. And basically, this is the core differences. There's many details. You can look it up in the. We bring it down on Parshas Teruma. There's differences from the Rebbe's father, but this is the main point of the difference over there. The level of tzaddikim and Yidden can have an effect on heaven. That's why there's the Aroin with Avov. The Keruvim come before the Oren, showing the effect. Now our Parsha, we're on the lower level. Luchos Shniyos showing the level of Baltshuva, and that's why first it mentions the Oren, then the Keruvim, and the Oren is missing a Vav, showing that we're not on that level where we can affect the heaven, of course. But there's always, in each generation, we know tzaddikim, still tzaddikim, who we're connected to them. They can always, through their power, can always change the decrees of heaven. HaKadosh Baruch Hu goyze, but tzaddik mevatel.